Week 7 is here, and it is time to make our waiver claims for fantasy football. Today, I'll be going through the players that should be rostered in your league, my top 10 running back and wide receiver pickups of the week, and my 3 favorite quarterback and tight end streamers. But let's waste no more time, and let's go through the players that should be rostered in your league. Starting at the top, Josh Downs, pretty simple. Yes, he's not getting a full snap share for the Colts, but in back-to-back games, he's gotten 7+ targets, and he has gotten 6+ receptions in each of those games. And with Josh Downs, sure, the snap share is still low, but when he's on the field, he's commanding targets, and he could see more snaps if he continues to play this well. The Colts offense has been tremendous this year, and if Josh Downs can continue playing like this, he has the upside to be the #1 target on the team. We go to Kendrick Bourne. He has been dynamic in these last 2 weeks. 20 targets, 284 receiving yards in the last 2 games. Jawan Jennings left this week banged up. Ricky Pearsall hasn't played in these 2 games. And even with George Kittle coming back, if those 2 wide receivers are going to be out yet again in week 7, I think you can trust Kendrick Bourne as a top 30 wide receiver in fantasy. And finally, Christian Kirk. He came into the year banged up, but he did have the week 6 bye to be able to recover. And we saw 3 straight games with a 20+% targets per out run prior to the Texans bye week. Maybe we do see a full snap share from him coming out of the bye. But moving on to the #1 waiver pickup of the week, we have Kimani Vidal, running back of the LA Chargers. And I do think going into this week, the Chargers used a hot hand approach at running back. We did have the report coming into Sunday, Hassan Haskins expected to be the starter. And I do think that was initially the intention. But when Kimani Vidal comes into the game, looks efficient, 138 yards from scrimmage on 22 opportunities, you have to continue feeding him the rock. With Kimani Vidal, the usage was excellent. 67% of the snaps and a lion's share of both the rushing carries and routes out of the backfield. With Kimani Vidal, I don't expect this workload to maintain every single week, but if he's going to continue playing this well, he will get a ton of snaps. We do trust this Chargers offense, and I do think he could be relied upon as a top 25-ish level running back, assuming that Omarion Hampton is out. And with Omarion Hampton, we do have recent reports. He is expected to be out longer than the 4-week IR timeline. So with Kimani Vidal, if you can potentially get 5 games of him as a starting running back for the Chargers, he is worth the rest of your fab budget. Pickup number 2, we have another running back with Tajay Spears of the Tennessee Titans. He's in his 2nd game of the season, coming off of that preseason high ankle sprain, and he saw his snaps doubled, carries increased, and he ran nearly 60% of the Titans routes this week. This comes a week after we have that report from Titans offense coordinator Nick Holtz, basically confirming that Tajay Spears would get an increased workload as we go by. Tajay Spears, as we know, they kind of had to ramp him up last week. He did get a big workload this week, and he paid it off, man. 9 PPR points, and that was despite only getting a 33% carry share on this team. And honestly, I think based off how Tajay Spears looked, based how bad that Tony Pollard's basically been this year, there's a very real possibility we could see Tajay Spears wrestle the starting role, which is why he's all the way up at number 2 for me. I think the implied upside for Tajay Spears, an elusive back, a 3-down profile, a big-time receiving skill set, I think he's a standalone top 35, top 40-ish level back. Anything were to happen to Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears were to downright wrestle the #1 job from him, we are talking about a potential fantasy football league winner. We saw it down the stretch last year. Not to mention, the Titans are just simply a bad football team. They just fired their head coach, Brian Callahan, 6 games into the year. They're 0-6. They're last in the NFL. Realistically, from a team building perspective, if you are Mike Borgonzi, GM of the Titans, are we really just going to keep feeding Tony Pollard? Like Tony Pollard, he has an out in his contract after the year. He's a league average level running back, and you have 2 years left of team control for Tajay Spears. To me, the logical approach if you're Tennessee is seeing what you got in the young guy and moving on from Tony Pollard this offseason. So because that is a factor, because that is baked into the upside for Tajay Spears, I'd be willing to spend upwards of 20 to 30% of my fab on him. But moving on to pickup number 3, and this is a guy we've talked about before, so I won't go too in depth, but Jalen Coker needs to be on your roster. This is the last call for Jalen Coker. I'd be willing to spend 10 to 20% of my fab. Maybe you can get him for cheaper, $0, $3, $5. But he is scheduled to play this week. As we know with Coker, they moved Thielen this offseason. They named Jalen Coker the starting slot wide receiver, and then he strains his hamstring in the preseason. Spent the early part of the season on IR. Now he's officially making his debut this week. I'm telling you right now, if you don't go and pick up Jalen Coker going into this week, you will have to pay about 3 to 4x the fab budget on him next week. Just save yourself the hassle, save yourself the percentage, and take your flyer on Jalen Coker now. And Luther Burden's another high upside wide receiver in my opinion. Again, he's not the dump your fab type of wide receiver yet because he's not getting a full-time role. But as we did see with Chicago on Monday night, DJ Moore, he leaves the game at the end, ends up getting rushed to the hospital. Luther Burden, he's flashed on his limited sample. Yes, theoretically, Olamide Zaccheaus would probably be the wide receiver 2 in the short term, but I think Burden is just simply too talented. If you get him in 11 personnel, he'll eventually outplay Olamide Zaccheaus, and he has the upside to be the number 2 target on this team after Rome Odunze. So when it comes to Luther Burden, he keeps flashing, and he is one of my favorite bench stash wide receivers. If you're 4-2, if you're 5-1, and you don't have to rely upon, low ceiling, high floor options on your bench, there aren't many higher upside stashes at wide receiver than Luther Burden in fantasy. And maybe if you're 4-2, 5-1, you go after a guy like Luther Burden. If you're more so in the 1-5, 2-4, even 3-3, but low point score type of situation, maybe you prefer a guy like Elikayo Manor. Because with Elikayo Manor, also a rookie wide receiver, has flashed some upside this year. The cons with him is you're not getting the insurance, the insulation of a Bears offense, but you're potentially getting the number 1 wide receiver for Cam Ward. We do have a report leaving this Titans game. Calvin Ridley ends up hurting his hamstring. And as we know with Tennessee, I kind of mentioned it with Tajay Spears, they are completely dysfunctional right now. Like I said, if Ridley is not going to be playing in the short term, you may as well see what you have. Cam Ward, Elikayo Manor, Tajay Spears, can they be your young nucleus of the future? And I think we find out in these next coming weeks if Ridley is scheduled to miss time. The reports right now, according to Twitter Doc, say about 2 to 4 week recovery for Calvin Ridley, but monitor the situation. See if he has an MRI. See if he gets determined as a grade 1 or a grade 2. That's going to be really relevant when it comes to Elikayo Manor. Elikayo Manor was a guy that was the wide receiver 7 in the class for me. I think is a talented player, and he's been a full-time player despite being a day 3 pick for the Titans. And a very similar case to Tez Johnson. I don't think he was quite the prospect that Elic was, but you do have the insulation of the Buccaneers offense. On top of that, when Emeka Egbuka did go out, funny enough, both dealing with hamstring injuries, Calvin Ridley and Emeka Egbuka, Tez Johnson became an 84% route share player, and Tez Johnson commanded 34% of the Buccaneers' air yards. We trust Baker Mayfield. We trust Josh Gazard. And I do think Tez Johnson kind of has a similar appeal to a Tank Dell, for example. Slider guy, very, very good analytical profile. I thought they were very similar prospects. So if Tez Johnson can continue earning this type of role for the Buccaneers offense, we could be talking about this year's Tank Dell. Number 7, Bam Knight. And I'm sure in a lot of other waiver lists, he'll be, number 1, number 2, number 3 for some people. But the reason I'm lower on Bam Knight is that when your team is at full strength, you simply will never know when to start him. Like, realistically, you're going to have better options than Bam Knight. Like, I understand it. If you're in a bad situation right now, you need running back points, your depth is completely shot, sure, go and pick up Bam Knight. But you have to remember, Bam Knight played less than 50% of the Cardinals snaps. Bam Knight had less than 50% of the Cardinals carries. Oh, by the way, the Cardinals are the single worst rushing attack in football right now. If you're getting a sub 50% opportunity share back for the Arizona Cardinals, are we really all that excited? Like, I understand it. Again, if you need a high floor, a guy that has touchdown equity, again, he is the goal line back for the Cardinals. I understand it. But how good is this Cardinals offense realistically going to be without Kyler Murray? And when you combine that with the fact that he plays the Packers in week 7 and has a week 8 bye, let your league mate go and spend 35, 55, 60% of their fab on a guy like Bam Knight. Again, keep them honest. If you want Bam Knight, 10 to 20%, I'd be willing to go. But anything more than that, let your idiot league mate go and pick him up. Number 8, Kendre Miller. Again, I don't really have to spend too long here. We've talked about Kendre Miller a ton of times on this waiver video, but it's pretty simple. 30+% of the team carries in 3 straight games. And Alvin Kamara is an old running back that has suffered injuries in the past. This will probably profile into a 60-40, 65-35 split in favor of Alvin Kamara. But Kendre Miller has flashed, and he has workhorse size. 6 foot, 220 pounds. To me, he's the clear handcuff for Alvin Kamara, and he needs to be stashed in every league. My number 9 pickup is Kayshon Boutte of the New England Patriots, and very similar to a guy like Elikayo Manor, Tez Johnson. Like, if you need wide receivers to play in a pinch, I think Kayshon Boutte can be your guy because he's been a consistent 70+% route share player, and he's attached to Drake May at quarterback. Drake May, he's currently playing like a top 5 level quarterback right now. Like, the way Drake May is playing, he can carry these wide receivers in terms of production. And on top of that, Stephon Diggs is still not a full-time route share player. I think with Kayshon Boutte, you kind of know what you're going to get. Very, very good matchup. Going in week 7 to play that dysfunctional Tennessee Titans team. If you really need someone to put in your lineup, 10 to 20% go and get Kayshon Boutte. I just don't know how long-term it is for him because you'll never know when to play him when your team's at full strength. And at number 10, we got Jordan Whittington, wide receiver of the LA Rams. Obviously, we know the elephant in the room, Puka Nacua, he gets hurt on Sunday. And the 2 games that we saw Jordan Whittington healthy last year with no Puka Nacua, he legitimately got a ton of usage. I mean, we're talking about 85+% of the routes in both games, 24+% targets per route run, and a 22+% target share in both of those games. On top of that, 12.2 and 15.9 PPR points. Look, I understand everything can change here. Tutu Atwell can get more volume. The Kyron Williams, the tight end position, maybe more targets are funneled there. But based off what we saw from Whittington last year when Puka wasn't in the lineup, I think he's a worthwhile add. You have to throw a few bucks just for the upside of it. I would be willing to go and get Jordan Whittington, especially if you did lose Puka Nacua. If you were the Puka Nacua manager and you lost him, I think Jordan Whittington is a very, very good substitute. But now let's breeze through the tight end and quarterback streamers. We will start with tight end. We have Harold Fannin, tight end of the Cleveland Browns. We did see David Njoku get hurt in week 6. On top of that, with Harold Fannin, 78% of the routes, 21% of the targets. On top of that, on the year, he is the tight end 13 in fantasy. If Njoku's going to miss time, Harold Fannin has proven he can command volume. I understand that the Cleveland Browns are a tough watch, but this is a young rookie that's been playing well. We go to Michael Mayer, tight end of the Las Vegas Raiders. He was a workhorse tight end. I mean, keep this in mind. No Brock Bowers, but Michael Mayer was a top 40 pick. Michael Mayer was one of the better tight end prospects we've seen in the last 5 years, and he proved it in week 6. 80% of the routes, 32% of the targets, and 16 PPR points for Michael Mayer. I think as long as Brock Bowers is out of the lineup, he's an every week top 12 to 15 tight end option. And the same applies to Cade Otton. I mentioned Tez Johnson on this video. You can even make the case that Cade Otton will operate in a big-time volume role for this Buccaneers offense. We saw it last year. He can soak up targets across the middle of the field. And with Noah Emeka or Chris Godwin in particular, the middle of the field belongs to Cade Otton. And then moving on to the streaming quarterbacks. Again, we'll keep it brief. Sam Darnold playing too well right now. I understand. Tough defense going up against Houston. But with the way Sam Darnold is playing, I don't think you can sit him. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, 28.64 points, 20 PPR points. We've seen the Seahawks rely on the pass a lot more in these last few weeks, and I think that will continue going up against a tough Texans front. Next up, Michael Penix. He's been very volatile this year, but we now have a 49ers defense that is without their 2 best players. No Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner. This 49ers defense is a shell of itself, and as we know with Michael Penix, he will be willing to rip the ball down the field, potentially getting Darnell Mooney back, especially next week. And then finally, Bryce Young. Like, I understand he beat up on the Cowboys this week, over 19 points, 3 passing touchdowns, but he's quietly thrown 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in these last 2 games, and he has another cupcake on deck. The New York Jets, they cannot cover anybody, and I'm expecting another big-time performance for Young. But either way, if you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like down below and comment your biggest waiver pickup of the week. With that being said, good luck in your matchups. I'll see you later this week. Let's secure those dubs in week 7.